due to 45's slow, botched response to the pandemic, he has given a lot of empty assurances on on the controlling of the virus because he hasn't really got it under control. Coming out of Washington D.C., the Associated Press, it says 45 said that we have it under control, and he's referring to the virus. About a month later, the coronavirus is very much under control in the U.S. April and May brought the deadliest stretch of the COVID-19 up to date, and this past week, the number of new coronavirus cases per day has hit an all-time high of about 50,000. 45 persisted in his empty assurances that the virus is getting under control. He said Wednesday his press secretary described the surge in many parts of the country as embers, and the squatter acknowledged flames here and there. They cast word confetti over a pandemic that has killed more than 128,000 people in the U.S., while the squatter talked up a July 4th fireworks celebration on the National Mall, and told those who come Saturday to wear masks if it makes them feel good. A sampling of the recent statements and how it compares with reality. The virus threat, 45 described the COVID-19 threat as getting under control. Some places were doing very well, and we thought that, and he basically said, we thought the virus may be gone and they would flare up and print out the fires. These were remarks that he had made on a job report. 45 also said, I think we are going to be very good with the coronavirus. I think that at some point that's going to sort of just disappear. And that was what he had made, that's the comments he had made on an interview Wednesday when he was on Faux News. The fact is the virus is not going to disappear, says Dr. Anthony Fauci, the government's top infectious disease expert, nor can it be considered under control, as cases have been surging to a daily high. The number of confirmed cases in the U.S. per day has roughly doubled over the past month, hitting 50,000 on Wednesday, according to a count kept by the Johns Hopkins University. That is higher even than what the country experienced from mid-April through the early May, when the deaths sharply rose. Fauci warned this past week. Fauci had warned this past week that the increase across the South and West puts the entire country at risk, and that new infections could reach 100,000 a day if people don't start listening to the guidance from public health authorities to wear a mask and practice the social distancing. During one of the biggest weekends of the summer for the July 4th, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention advised Americans to wear face masks, even at the beach, though not in the water. Arizona, California, Florida, and Texas have recently been forced to shut down bars and businesses as the virus's cases surge out there. The U.S. currently has more than 2.7 million known cases and many more undetected. Fauci has said that certainly there will be coronavirus infections in the fall and winter. The dumbass Mike Pence, while we're monitoring about 16 states, and this is something he said, but while we're monitoring about 16 states that are seeing outbreaks, it represents about 4% of all the countries of all the counties in this country. That was an interview with CBS aired Sunday. The fact is that's a misleading portrayal of the virus that more than 20% of Americans actually live in those relatively few countries, or counties. The White House provided the Associated Press with the full list of the U.S. counties that reported increases in COVID-19 cases as of a week ago, when the dumbass Pence and other administration officials repeatedly cited the low county tally. The list showed about 137 of the 3,142 counties in the U.S. that were under a high alert, and did about 4% in that snapshot of the time. But measured by population, those counties represent a vastly higher share, more than 1 in 5 people in the U.S. Altogether, there are 68.3 million people living in those 137 counties, while there is a total of the U.S. population of 322.9 million. That means 21.1% of the U.S. residents actually live in the virus hotspots identified in that list. 45 basically said about Biden, basically, Cheeto said that Biden was asked questions at his so-called press conference yesterday when he read questions from the teleprompter. That means he was given the questions, not exactly. The fact is, Biden did not read answers off a teleprompter, nor did the Associated Press, which asked the first questions at the briefing, submit questions in advance. Biden did use a teleprompter to read prepared remarks that took aim at 45's handling of the coronavirus, but before the questions and answers started, at which point the teleprompter appeared to have been turned off. Biden's campaign gave him a list of news organizations to call on, and he answered questions from reporters on that list, as well as some as he chose spontaneously. That's not an uncommon practice when officials give news conferences. Video footage shows that during nearly 30 minutes of questioning and answers, Biden often looked directly at the reporter, not at the teleprompter. His answers were at times long-winded without the practiced pauses typically heard in prepared speeches. The Biden campaign National Press Secretary T.J. Ducklo called 45's allegation laughable, ludicrous, and a fucking lie because 45's known to lie. 45's accusation reflected his tactic of trying to stir doubts about Biden's mental acuity. 45 claims that Biden wants to defund and abolish the police. The fact is, Biden does not join the call of protesters who demanded defund the police after George Floyd's killing. And Biden himself says he doesn't support the defunding the police. This is something he said last month in a CBS interview, but he said he would support conditioning federal aid to police based on whether they meet certain basic standards of decency, honorableness, and in fact are able to demonstrate they can protect the community and especially everybody. Biden's criminal justice agenda, released long before he became the Democrats' presidential nominee, he proposes more federal money for training that is needed to avert tragic, unjustifiable deaths and hiring more officers to ensure that the departments are racially and ethnically reflective of the populations they serve. Specifically, he calls for a $300 million infusion into existing federal community policing grant programs. This adds up to more money for police and not defunding the law enforcement. Biden also wants the federal government to spend more on education, social services, and struggling areas of cities in rural America to address the root causes of crime. On the war in Iraq, Kayleigh McEnema, White House press secretary, you have the squatter who when Washington was unanimous in saying it says we're going into Iraq. The squatter said, no, that's not the right decision. The fact is that's false. 45 voiced support for going into Iraq as much as he and his now press secretary insist otherwise, and Washington was not unanimous in supporting this decision. On September 11th of 2002, when radio host Howard Stern asked 45 whether he supported a potential Iraq invasion, 45 said, yeah, I guess so. On March 21st, 2003, just days after the invasion, 45 said it looks like a tremendous success from a military standpoint. Later that year, he began expressing reservations. More than 150 members of Congress voted against the 2002 resolution to authorize the then President George W. Bush to use military force against Iraq. This is not unanimity. On memorials, 45 says we are tracking down the two anarchists who threw paint on the magnificent George Washington statue in Manhattan. They will be prosecuted and face 10 years in prison. And 45 also says since imposing a very powerful 10-year prison sentence on those that vandalize this monument, statues, etc., with many people being arrested all over our country, the vandalism has completely stopped. The fact is that 45 does not have the authority to impose prison sentences. A squatter is not a judge, nor can he toughen penalties on his own. 45 did sign an executive order last week to protect monuments, memorials, and statues, calling on the Attorney General to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law any person or group that destroys or vandalizes a monument, memorial, or statue. The order basically instructs the Attorney General to enforce laws that already exist.